So, hi everyone, it's Richard from the Homeschool Freedom Club, and I've got another one in my series of interviews with home ed parents to basically talk to them, have a general chat about how they got started in home ed, and once they started, how they actually supported themselves. So, today I've got Michelle Foulia with me from the lovely north of Wales, isn't it? I think you're in North Wales.
Yep.
Welcome, thanks for coming on board.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Michelle. So, you live in North Wales, and just tell us a bit about your family situation.
Okay, so I'm actually Cypriot, but living in the UK, in Wales at the moment. My husband is also Cypriot, so he's a coffee barista trainer and consultant, and I'm based at home so that I can home educate my children. And we have three kids. Our oldest, Mihalis, is 20. Our younger son, Vangelis, is 16 now, and our daughter is 12. And we have two pets. We have Melon the cat and Poppy the dog, lounging in the sun as we speak. I don't know if you
Oh,
can
not
see
a
them.
bad life, is it? Not
Not a
a bad
bad
life.
life.
Oh, and
Yeah,
there's the famous
yeah.
Poppy.
Yes. So yeah, I forgot.
We'll get to Poppy in a little bit. So what made you start home educating, and how long have you been doing it for?
We've been home educating for 12 years now, and it all started when our oldest was in primary school here in the UK. We moved to the UK in 2001. So he was in a very good, reputable primary school, and it just started with bullying. Basically, it was sort of 3 years of bullying and us trying to resolve it, doing all the kind of approaches, looking at every way to resolve the issue with the school. And it got to the point where it became very physical. His personality completely changed. I mean, he was only 8 at the time, and it got to the point where I felt that I didn't know what to do. I didn't have homeschooling on the radar, but I didn't know what to do. But I knew I just had to get him out of there. So it just, that's how it started. Was like, let's just get him out of there for his safety and his well-being, his mental health, and then we'll figure it out. So we took him out, and initially we put him into a private school, but we couldn't sustain it financially. But he was much happier because he went from a class of 35 to a class of 10, and he was much happier. He was fine. He got on with everybody. But by then, because the whole bullying thing started me thinking of what other options are there, and I began then looking into home education or alternative education, let's say, like a broader, what else is out there. And by the time he got to the private school, I started noticing other things that were bothering me. I was noticing that we were firefighting every day. Like, he would come home and he would be like, this person said this and that person said that, and my teacher said, then I would find myself just constantly trying to resolve things rather than build on our relationship or build on knowledge or anything like that. And then I started noticing things like, my child's out of the house for 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, trusting him to strangers to educate him. And he comes home exhausted, and then we have to sit and do homework. And by the time we've done that, it's sort of bedtime, or maybe some extracurricular activity, and then bedtime. And I started to realize I don't see my children. We don't have enough time together as a family. And the time we have, we're ticking boxes for the state or for whoever, private school, curriculum, whatever it is. And it really started to grate with me that I'm just going to share that I've had 9 pregnancies and I have 3 children. So I've lost a lot of babies. And I felt this sense of, gosh, I haven't gone through this battle to have my children so I can just shove them away and send them off to somebody for pretty much like 3/4 of their childhood and have no time with them, no quality time with them, no time to build values and relationship and bonds and connection, and then build on knowledge. So that's what then started to really bother me. And by then I did a lot of research about alternative education and home education, and was more ready to take that step. And then we just did that. Well, like a year later, we took him out of that and we began home educating, and we still are with the younger two as well.
it's so damaging, isn't it, bullying at school? I mean, I suffered from it all through my high school sort of career. You know, the 5 or 6 years that I was there, and it just makes your life a misery. And even, I mean, you know, Alex, our little boy who you met, he went to school for the grand total of 2 terms, and he was 4 years old. And during that time, there was a kid who was 6 that was pulling the hairs out of his arms at lunchtime, and he just he just it's like I don't
Yeah.
know. There's just no words, are there? It's just so unpleasant, and when you sort of see your child going through that as well, it's really difficult. And you know, how amazing that you took those steps though to actually get him out of that environment and to put him into something fresh. I mean, that's just absolutely brilliant. And so, did
Mm.
all of your after that after Michaelis was home educated, did like Vangelis, did he just go straight into home education? And then Areti, is it your?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, we followed through with the other two kind of naturally because it was working so well with our oldest. And we had initially started with a very structured curriculum, which we bought, like we bought the package and we were working through it. But then Mihalis just wasn't connecting with that. And then I kind of got to a day, only months in, where I thought,
yeah,
what am I? Like, we're just doing school at home now. It's ridiculous. Yes, it's keeping him safe, but now we're just like chained to this kitchen table trying to work through the curriculum. And of course, me being like the kind of always going down the big rabbit holes, I by then had looked into unschooling and was so fascinated by it, and it really fitted our lifestyle because we're kind of very unconventional family, very non-conformist. And I thought, oh, I love this idea of unschooling and going with our children's interests, and also as a family what we're doing, involving them in everything. And so we began that, and so that by the time Vangelis was kind of getting involved with us, we were already unschooling, so we were already using this much more liberal
yeah.
system. But and so with Areti now, both Vangelis and Areti wanted to try school, so
Hmm.
they both tried twice. And now, actually, so have to tell you as well that in 2014, we went to Greece for 2 years.
Hmm.
First year, we carried on kind of unschooling, but then we realized that we needed to put the children in school because the system that doesn't allow you to home educate.
Right.
So and we were fostering as well at the time, so we had to put Vangelis. Areti was too young; she was only a baby, but we had to put Mihalis and Vangelis into
Hmm.
school. So they actually did school for a year, private school in Greece for a year.
Wow.
They hated it. It was so much more. I want to be really careful because I could go to town with what I really feel about, but I want to be diplomatic. Let's just say I felt like we were going backwards rather than forwards, and I was
Yeah.
just having to children's um, battles. And I just, again, I thought, what is this ridiculous? But Mihali's mental health really, really suffered. And Vangelis, who has ADHD as well, was just coming home. He'd be such a good little boy at school, and they would be singing his praises, and he'd come home and he'd just explode into meltdown and
Uh-huh.
meltdown. Doing is dealing with meltdowns. And again, I sat down and I thought, why are we doing this? And what's the purpose of this? And what are we achieving? Why do we believe everybody who thinks this is the way? So again, it's this kind of process that we always seem to go through as a family.
Yeah.
And my husband went, no, we're not going to allow our children to go through this suffering, because that's not what life is about,
Yeah.
and so we left, we came back to the UK, continued home educating. But Areti tried 2 schools in the UK, and she lasted, I think, 2 weeks in one and 10 days in the other one. Um, so again, and she was just astonished at the bad behavior.
Hmm.
So interesting from a child's perspective to say, I believe how badly behaved children are and how boring it was. And also, the thing that really struck her, she said, I can't believe I have to raise my hand to ask to go to a toilet. Like, why can't I go to the
Uh-huh.
toilet? Why do I have to ask for permission to go to that? Seemed to her absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. But that the simplest, most basic thing, she said, I have to ask permission to go to do something that's so private and personal and intimate. I have to
Uh-huh.
ask everybody,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought, oh my gosh, we as adults have become so conditioned into thinking all these things are okay.
Yeah.
And then they're a violation of our bodies and our mental being and our souls. I mean, as an adult, can you imagine working for a company and putting your hand up in the middle of your work and going,
Yeah.
excuse me, if I go to the toilet? We would never even consider it, but we think it's
Hmm.
okay for a child to do that when they're even more vulnerable and more, innocent. So it was those kind of things. And she made her choice. For me, it was like they had to make their own decision. It was always important that they had ownership of that decision. So we tried. I was like, yep, let's give it a go if you want to try.
Yeah.
And they all kind of were like, no, never again.
But I mean, the point about the toilet's a good one, and especially for girls when they hit puberty and periods start. And again, just how embarrassing to have to
Yeah.
do that. And you're right, we are just totally, I mean, I was totally conditioned through that. I mean, we all went through the system, the school system, and it's normalized, isn't it? And that's the trouble.
Yes.
And sometimes it just takes a real shift to actually start thinking outside of that and just realizing. And again, you were saying about the Mikhail's mental health suffering, and school's responsible for so much of that in kids, and
Yeah.
stress, and it almost, again, it almost normalizes it for later life, doesn't it? It's that this is how life is. This is, it's not going to get any better than this. There's the old adage, isn't there? The school days are the best days of your life. Oh, come on.
No. Yeah.
Absolutely the worst of mine. I hated school.
And I think for those that cope and survive school, they might have some good memories of like friendships that they might have made.
Yeah,
And this habit that will either remember only like the most negative or most traumatic experiences, but sometimes we choose to hide those
yeah,
subconsciously and remember the good friendships and the good times, or one teacher that was really inspiring, which can happen.
yeah.
Obviously, it did with me in school, but for me, it's such an outdated system. I cannot understand why, as a society, we're allowing it, because it's cruel and it's barbaric. I mean, in where I live now, and my children have friends who are in school, and they come over, and the teenagers, and they have to have passes
Hmm.
past secondary school, and these kids are almost adults, and they have to have passes to be allowed to leave the room if they have a neurodivergence or
Uh-huh.
going on, or a pass to go to the bathroom, or a pass to and then they get punished if they haven't, like if they're late or whatever, their pass gets taken away. So these are your most fundamental rights, and somebody decides to take it from you because you couldn't cope enough to
Hmm.
turn, because it's too much for you, because it's overwhelming. And some of them have overwhelming situations at home too, and it's like these kids have nowhere to go, and
Yeah.
it's an outdated barbaric system. And you can tell I feel really strongly about it.
Really?
You?
You were sitting on the fence a bit there.
I am like so not like so completely.
Yeah.
Because I feel so angry. I feel so angry that what we are not shaping young people to be healthy citizens of the
Yeah.
next, and we are absolutely driving them. I mean, the fact alone that the number one cause of death in young people today is suicide. I don't know if it's in this country. I heard it the other day, and I was so astonished I couldn't withhold which country. I don't know if it was talking about Europe or the UK or America, but it was saying, the number one cause of death, and I just thought in young people, and I was like, shouldn't that be panicking everybody? That
Hmm.
hello, that in itself, my children have lost two friends to suicide at 13 years old.
Good God.
This is just
Yeah.
imagine, and with both the kids, it was bullying.
Yeah.
But anything, no one's held accountable. The system's not held accountable. The school's not held accountable, because they
Hmm.
just the carpet, they cover it up, they do a memorial service, they do all this stuff in the name of the person that, and it's like, well, you were responsible. You allowed this to happen. You didn't take any action. You knew, both of the kids, the schools knew.
Yeah.
Um, but just gets brushed under the carpet, and it
Carry
carries
on.
on. Change, so. But yeah, anyway, I don't want I could talk about that for hours. I won't.
Well, no, I mean, one of the reasons that
Passionate about it.
no, I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this, these sort of series of interviews, is to try and help encourage people who maybe sat on the fence. They want to take the kids out of school, but they're just afraid to make that step. To take that
Yeah.
step. And one of the big concerns, I mean, there's several. One of them is who am I to teach my children? Well, I'm sorry, but you're the parent. So, you don't need to be qualified as a teacher, and your kids will learn whatever situation you put them in. I mean, obviously, it can differ a bit as they get older, but generally speaking, especially with young kids, they just pick up everything as they as they go along. It seems it's absolutely incredible to watch. But the thing I really want to focus on is the financial aspect, because again, a lot of families, they choose to home educate. We're in a situation where in a lot of households, two incomes are needed to support the household, and to have the kids at home all the time. A lot of people think, well, I can't home ed and I can't world school and earn money. And of course, it's just not the case. And this is why I've been doing these interviews, because I've been talking to people that are actually doing this very successfully and making a living for themselves. And in some cases, they're single parents as well. So it can be done. I just really wanted to talk to you, Michelle, about, obviously you've been home educating for 12 years. So you've probably seen and done a fair selection of things during that period of time.
Yes, we have. Um, that too, but I want to also say on that, because sometimes people will have a means by which to stay home and work from home, but they'll
Yeah.
say, oh, calls for 3 hours or 5 hours a day. I can't be schooling my kids while I'm on all these
Yeah.
calls that I have or whatever, right? So it's not just finding something where you work from home. For me, what happened over the years, what we've done that's worked, and would be my advice, is you've got to step out of the different ways of thinking about education, schooling, work.
Mm-hmm.
For us, even parenting, like we brought everything into the pie, into the pot, and it was about even a marriage, like how are we doing marriage, how are we doing parenting, how are we doing everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then how can we step away from what everybody else is saying, thinking, doing, the conditioning we've had, the
Uh-huh.
everything. How would it work for us?
Yeah.
If I was a single parent, I would have done this. I would have been, okay, I'm on my own. I need this X amount of money to come in, and how do I do it? What do I need to happen to make it work? And you got to think out of the box. Now, one of the things that's worked really well for us is it was really important from the beginning to create an environment where our children became autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously growing up in Cyprus, it's really helped us, because growing up in Cyprus, I'm almost 50 now, I'll be 50 in a few months. We were growing up at a time when our friends and us would work in our parents' businesses. So if our parent had a restaurant, we would be
Mm-hmm.
serving. It was allowed back then. It's not allowed anymore. And we would go out and be with our friends without any phones. Nobody knew where we were. Nobody
Uh-huh.
knew come home to eat, go to bed. But this built autonomy and independence, and skills to learn to look after yourself. You could make yourself something to eat. You could clean a house. Like I know all my friends,
Mm-hmm.
we had to clean the house as well for our parents who worked. Not all parents, but anyway, you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So, because I'm trying to stay succinct, I don't want to go off in a tangent. So I would say that's really important. So for me, because I work from home, and so over the years, what I've done is trained in different modalities in therapy. So I've trained in counseling and clinical hypnotherapy and animal assisted therapy and all these various modalities of therapy. But I'm also a writer. So my work is I work on my books that I write, which might either be self-published or published traditionally.
Yeah.
But I also work as a therapist and a coach. So it depends on my client, which modalities I'm going to use in my
Mm-hmm.
work. And so obviously I also have to be on calls, or I might have to have somebody come to the house, and it means nobody can disturb me, nobody can interrupt me. So for us, the unschooling models worked really well, because it means that each child has their work, let's say their kind of schedule, which they're part of, they create.
Yeah.
Just my support, and they decide what they're going to do each day, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, but they know the hours that I'm not available,
Yeah.
and they won't disturb me unless it's an emergency. But they know to work, like they have learned, they have developed the tools to say, okay, mom's not to be disturbed, therefore, okay, I can do this while I'm waiting for mom to be free to help me with it.
Yeah.
And I can do that, and I can chill and play video games or whatever, because we don't have a set timing per day. We don't
Yeah.
say from 9 till 10 it's learning, and 11 to 12 it's this. We don't. It's like you've got the whole day,
Hmm.
and you can do one thing today, you can do exploring this thing, you can do your research on whatever you're doing, you can do work on your art, you can practice
Yeah.
your music, whatever it is. And if you need me for something, I'll be available at 4 or 5 or 9 or 10 or whatever, right? Whatever
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And they learn to understand that. They learn, but it's such a useful skill for them, because they also learn to be adaptable. They learn to be able to manage their own
Hmm.
projects and their own learning, and not be every 5 minutes, mom, 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 which when my son was in school, it was like that with
Yeah.
homework. I don't know how to do it. I didn't understand that. What is it saying I should need to do? And I'd be like, just read the question. I
Yeah.
don't know what it, like, just break it down. I don't know what it's saying. It's just like panic, because they're so used to being fed
Yeah.
information,
Yeah.
right? So the beginning point is to think, okay, this is the job I'm going to do from home, and these are the hours I'll need to be working, and this is when I'm going to be available. And then you start to cultivate in your children that autonomy,
Hmm.
and understanding that when I say I'm not to be disturbed, I'm not to be disturbed. Find a way. And they do. They're so capable of doing it
Yeah.
if we're not micromanaging
Yeah.
everything. I mean, mine now, they cook their meals, they'll cook breakfast, they'll, you know, go and do their walks, they'll do all sorts of things without me needing to be jumping in all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
but we've worked a plan. Now, the other way is to, if you've got to do structured learning stuff, if you need to do book work or whatever, again, you just work around it, and it doesn't have to be in the morning or in the afternoon, or I mean, sometimes we just lie in bed in the evening and going,
Mhm.
okay, just, let's see how we can do this, and we put a bit of music on, and we make it into an experience, not
Yeah.
like, come on, bring me your math, let's do this. It's also about how you approach it.
Yeah.
If you bed and you make a hot chocolate and you get all under the covers and you're like, okay, let's see if we can tackle this
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
It's about that. I think for me, it's take a step out of the conformity that you've used to and find different ways. We've done it on the swings. When they were younger, we
Uh-huh.
would park and just talk through the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because I that sometimes when they're walking or playing and they're getting rid of energy, they're listening more and they're taking things, and it doesn't feel like a
Yeah.
lesson.
Things like
So
swings and that kind of regulates, you find it kind of regulates them, doesn't it? Just that back and forth motion, it almost sort of zones them out, you know? But I think you made
yeah,
a really important point there, Michelle. It's about seeing, like, educating your kids as being an integral part of your day, not as something separate that you have to do completely on the side, that it can't interfere with anything else, that you've got to be there 24/7 to sort them out. I mean, what age, because obviously your kids are a bit older, but what age would you say they were when they sort of gained more of that independence and they weren't? I mean, obviously all children are different, so yours aren't going to be like a template for somebody else's, but,
yeah.
how old were they when you found that they really were at that point where they could hold off until sort of 4 o'clock to ask you that question, or and not come banging on the door?
Yeah. Well, I've I don't, I've never done a day where it's a 9 to 4 or 9 to 5. So I always,
Yeah.
my day, I make sure that with my work that there's big breaks in between, so that I am available throughout in chunks. And so when they were very young, they understood this from very young. I don't remember exact ages, but I remember that I just adapted and adjusted my day. Obviously, when they couldn't cook for themselves, I would prepare food, and then I would go into an appointment, and then I would come out and check in on them, and stuff like that. And the checking in, and that's the other thing that's important, is that, often you'll find parents are so frazzled from work and
Yeah.
they need downtime, which we do because self-care is really important. But then they'd be like, oh, I'm just going to go from one to the other to the other. Now I'm going to check my emails, and now I'm going to check my, just a little bit of Facebook. But it's like, oh, your child hasn't had you check in. They
Yeah.
need some connections now. So that's really important. You can't be like, oh, I'm just going to work as if I were in an office. With home education, with you're changing the way you work and the way you live. So
Yeah.
we took a meal times and bedtimes because there's no need. They don't need to be up at 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
It's now 10:30 here, and I've just heard one of my three wake up, right?
Yeah.
It's but the moment I just can hear movement, and it's 10:30. I've been up since 7:30, so I got tons done already, right?
Yeah.
Before the first one arises. And then by the time all three are up, I'll have time to start, so we can have a morning chat and with a cup of tea. Then I'll do an appointment. By then they're ready to I think so it's not, but then they'll go to bed like midnight, or some of the older ones, but I don't even want to say what time they go to bed. Maybe when I'm getting up. But it doesn't matter. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. It doesn't matter why, or this doctor said kids need to go to bed at this time, and that science literature says this. Oh yeah, and this says that. Oh yeah, we were taught we all have to start our day with cereal till we discovered that Kellogg's funded the research, and we all were conditioned into eating cereal with
Yeah.
breakfast ever, right? And now there's this and there's that. And if we keep listening to all this advice from this doctor and that, we're just going to go under. We had to step and go, does it really matter if bed at midnight or 2 in the morning, as long as they've had enough sleep and we have connection and presence and, time together in different ways? Or does it matter if we do at the table and eat together? No, because we do other things together.
Yeah.
And actually, others' nerves if we eat together. Stop chewing loudly. Stop doing that. Stop eating with your,
Yeah.
I'm not siblings. I don't care. But between them, and so it's like, forget it. I make a meal. I'll make food about 3.
Yeah.
Leave everything ready on the counter. Everything is freshly made. It's on the counter, cleaned, filmed, or we put covers on whatever. And whenever they're hungry, they take their plate, they reheat, they eat wherever they like.
Yeah.
And I don't have an issue with that. So this is what I mean about take those conditioning things out of the equation. Is it important to you? But is it okay for your kids? Like, this is the thing. Why is it so important to you? Oh, no, I like all of us to sit together at the table. Why?
Yeah.
It's fulfilling your need. It might not necessarily work for everybody else in the family.
Well, I mean,
So
you're absolutely right, because when we're in a situation where the parents are at work, the children are at school, and that mealtime might be the only time you actually do get to sit down as a family. And you're right, again, it's conditioning, isn't it? It's because that's what we always did as kids. We always have family meal times with our parents, or we did in our house anyway. But that was because that was the only time you really got to sit together before vegging out in front of the telly.
Absolutely. And for some families it works and it's great, and that's no
Yeah.
problem. But what I'm using that as an example, and that's just an example, is to say it might mean that you change and you shift everything else so that you can fit your work in and have quality time with your family and not feel the pressure that, oh my God, I'm still in an appointment with somebody and it's 4 o'clock and the kids need to eat at 5 and my husband's going to be in starving waiting for dinner, and
Yeah.
we had to kind of, okay, what's another way around this, and still making sure the children are getting their nutrition and getting their vitamins, and getting a home cooked meal and all of that kind of thing. So that's what I mean about we had to put everything down, and that's an exercise that parents could do, is mind map it and put everything down on paper, maybe together, and say, right, these are the things that have to take place in order for us to have enough money coming in, to do the things we want to do. So for all this to take place, what do we move around? What do we change? It's like an architect, isn't it? It's like, oh, hang on, if we put that there, we got more light coming in. If we put that, no, that's not going to work. What if we do this? What if we do it that way? And you find for your family and for each member of the family. Like for us, it's not what I want, it's what works for everybody. All 3 of my kids are neurodivergent. I have to consider their needs. And the ages, some need me more than others. Sometimes my son needs to have a really long conversation about something, my oldest, my 20-year-old. And there are times I have to set work aside and go, yep, this is far more important. We need to do this now. And that's part of the process of adjusting and adapting it's an organic, evolving entity. It's not it has to be like this. And oh my God, it's not working. They're driving me insane. I go, okay, well, what could give? and they're not going to die of starvation. They're not going to die of, because you weren't there, boom, when they demanded
Yeah.
it or whatever, and there's all this there's so much you can do to create that, to carve that, so much.
Yeah. No, that's one. I mean, there's some really great points in there for anybody that's sort of thinking about taking this route and just wondering how it's all going to fit together, because it is one of the things that scares a lot of people. It's like, how am I going to fit everything into my day? And you're right. You just break it down, just break it down, and then and throw away all your preconceptions about how it has to be, and start from scratch with a fresh sheet of paper, and just work it out. And it's partly trial and error as well.
Mm.
And the thing is as well, I find, especially when you take the unschooling route, we're not our children's teachers, we're more facilitators, honestly. They do the research themselves, they look into things, they decide what they're interested in. And for hours, I just help them find resources and just work around like that. It's not a case of sitting there and you must do this and you must do that, because then, as you say, they might as well be at school,
Mm.
if they're following the school curriculum like that. And some kids it suits. Some kids need that, I think, the way they work, and they need that structure.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of kids actually don't, honestly. They're happy to be able to play when they want to play, and obviously all the while they're playing, they're learning. And this is something else that I think has kind of been forgotten. Play is such an important part. When you look at the animal kingdom, and the sort of the lion cub sort of stalking each other in the long grass and then pouncing and jumping on, but they're learning their life skills, and kids do the same. It's not, maybe not as obvious, because we're so used to everything being graded, and you've got to achieve this by this point and this by this time in your life, and da da da. And actually, it doesn't matter because
Yeah,
they will get there.
yeah, that's a really, really good point. And that's another thing, actually, that's maybe also really important to say. One of the things that we said to ourselves, my husband and I, when we made that decision, because my first thing was, what if we fail them? What if we fail at this and they end up uneducated?
Yeah.
And the answer to that came was really amazing, took all the pressure off, was
Uh-huh.
they have their whole life. And again, this is about the conditioning, right? By 18, they should have da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Box ticked. Yeah.
Why? I mean, I didn't have any of that. My situation was very complicated. So by the time I was 18, I had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I might have had a couple of GCSEs, if that, but nothing. I remembered nothing from school. I had to deal with a lot of trauma. So my focus was very much on that. I had nothing. I've spent all my life doing jobs, learning from them, finding what I don't like, finding what jobs I'd hate to ever do,
Mm-hmm.
finding myself, learning different skills and from different people, different employers, even the really bad employers. You learn what you wouldn't do as an employer, or if you
Yeah.
had a business. And then just taking different courses, no problem. I mean, I'm 49, and up until last year, I was doing um, a course in psychotherapy, which was a university level course, was part-time, and I can do that and have a family and run my little business. It's about how I carve the day to work for us. So what I would say for parents who go into this panic, but what about that? And what about their GCSEs? And what if they fall behind? This cannot happen. They cannot fall behind. Fall
Mm-hmm.
behind whose standards, right?
Yeah.
Where does that even? So what I say is they have their entire life to learn,
Mm-hmm.
to get qualifications, and to follow a career path that they enjoy. But to find what they want to do, they might require to do different jobs. They might need to do different things, and then realize, actually, I want to become a dog trainer. Well, I don't need to go to school or college or university for that. I can enroll in a private course. It's a half a
Mm-hmm.
year or whatever, and become a dog trainer, run my
Yeah.
business, or whatever. I've worked a lot with animals. That's the thing that comes up. But there are so many. You can become a chef. You can become. That's like the world is their oyster. We're in the Western world where
Mm-hmm.
there's so much opportunity. Open university, night classes, weekend classes, online classes, and you can get a qualification. I mean, my 20-year-old is now working as a delivery. He did university. He got into university, being unschooled, to do
Uh-huh.
law last year, but he hated it. He absolutely hated it. It's like, I can't imagine doing this. So he dropped out, and
Yeah.
now he's food deliveries in the evening while doing manually creating subtitles for movie episodes and things like that.
Okay.
And he's doing a couple course to teach English to foreign students, right? Because he wants to move abroad and have jobs that he can do online. So he's developing all that. And he hasn't done form. I mean, he did actually do his motor mechanics course as well, but then he decided to become a mechanic, right? So that's okay. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Just find, doesn't matter. They're all skills. So the world is their oyster. They can do that stuff anytime. The time they have now, the most important thing they can do is to learn who they are, is to get to learn self-agency, is to learn life skills, is to understand how to manage their mental health, their emotions, how to understand their body. It's the time you're going to have as parents to have connection and quality time and build values into them. That's the stuff that's more important when they're kids. And play and exploring through play, fun, boring time, because boring time creates creativity, right? When they're bored, not entertaining them 24/7. That's a new thing. Nobody used to be entertaining their kids all the time, finding them things to do. Kids, that's why we have amazing writers and artists and musicians, because they were bored and so they started creating, right? You just facilitate that. So I just don't see any problem with people wanting to work from home, run their businesses or run their job or a career, because you can work from home and be employed by somebody as well. So it doesn't have to be your own business, but obviously that's the easiest thing. And, and still provide your children with the safety and the nurturing that they need to be children, because that's the only time they get to be children.
Yeah, exactly.
And stress about the formal stuff. They can do that anytime.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It's not, it's a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it? At the end of the day, life, and as you say, you can pick up any of that stuff, and just, and I think that the great thing is, how great for kids at a younger age to be able to follow their passions and discover if that's for them as well. Which is something they don't really get the opportunity to do if they're at school. And like you say about Mackay doing the motor mechanics and then deciding he doesn't want to do it, but he's learned some useful skills there. You should be getting him to fix your car, Michelle. But
I don't have the tools at the moment.
But yeah, I just wanted to close really and have a talk about your book, Poppy's Miracle, the star of whom we saw just on the chair at the beginning of the interview. But just tell us a little bit more about that, how you came to decide to write a book. Was it something you'd always wanted, had like a yearning to do, and just never found the right material, or was it something you were just suddenly inspired to do?
Well, actually, the seed to write came from my teacher.
Okay.
I got it because I have teachers who are friends as well. So it's not the teachers I don't have an issue with; it's the system. Anyway, so when I was 11 years old in Cyprus in primary school, it was sort of my last days in school before going to secondary school, and my teacher absolutely, she was the only teacher in my school who saw something in me that nobody else could see, because I was always like daydreaming and not really coping well with my environment. So she would just get me to sit and write stories when I was in her class. She wouldn't get me to do any of the work others do. She would just give me pen and paper and she just would say, write me a story. And the whole class write stories, because she knew that I had gone through a lot of trauma and that actually what I just needed, it was to decompress. So she would give me that opportunity. And when I was leaving school, she said to me, she was saying goodbye, and she said, you're going to go off to secondary school now, big school in the city, and I'll probably never see you again, but I want you to promise me something. She said, I want you to promise me that you will continue to write, because you have a gift to tell things in a very particular way. And she said, and one day, I mean, I don't know whether this was like clairvoyant or prophetic or whatever, but she said, one day you're going to write books that are going to help people. And so make sure that you keep writing or journaling or something that keeps you writing. And I was like 11 and I just went straight in my head and I went, okay, thank you. And I didn't continue journaling or writing or doing any of that. I just went into life and work and all these different things. And then about 7 years ago, when we were living in Greece, we rescued a dog. We rescued Poppy that you saw earlier, and brought her back to the UK. But at the same time as rescuing Poppy, our younger son got diagnosed with ADHD and sensory processing disorder. So we were in this, like, I had my three, and we were fostering two older girls who had a lot of trauma issues. So it was a crazy, crazy time. And then this puppy came into our lives, who I didn't particularly really want, but she came into our lives, and she completely transformed our lives, because she was just like this beautiful therapy dog, basically, that just came in. And through having Poppy, through the story of trying to rescue her, trying to bring her back to the UK, and it became apparent, sort of, it all merged together with our son's challenges and his ADHD challenges, where I had to stop one day and go, all I keep doing is focusing on his issues and his challenges, like with the puppy, and I'm not seeing his gifts and his compassion and his creativity and his zest for life and his genius, sort of, and his humor and all that. And it was like a boom, it was like a thunderbolt, and just realizing that, oh my gosh, all I do is focus on negatives, on the disorder, right?
No.
And that changed the way I parented all three of them, in really zooming in on their gifts, just like my teacher did. Everybody else would see all my issues and my challenges. She saw my gift. So when we came back to the UK in 2015, I went to see a friend who has a therapy farm locally here in Wales, and she was just setting it up. And I thought, oh, I wish I had a way to help her raise the money. And then it just came to me. I thought, oh, I could write a story. And what story? I could write Poppy's story and our journey with ADHD. So it would help the children, other parents, children with ADHD, but it would also help, my friend farm. And so that's how it all started. And it took me about 7 years, because I really didn't believe I could do it. I didn't have the confidence to think anybody would want to read anything I had to write. And when I wrote it, I just left it sitting in my laptop for years, because I was so, just lacked confidence. I kept thinking, oh my, who am I to be a writer? What a joke, who's going to want to read this? And I sent it to a couple of publishers who didn't want it. Of course, then that cemented it even more. Like, of course they're not going to want me, like, And then, but they wouldn't go away. And just something kept, like, it wouldn't go away, because what I did, I wrote the story, and then I did it as a journal as well. So when a child reads the story, there's all these little prompts to help them the story, because you've got the copy.
I've got a bit,
And then there's all the prompts to help them identify their gifts and celebrate who they are. And so it's like part story, part journal. It's like a little project. It's a beautiful project to do as a family, or with a parent or a grandparent. I've got therapists using it with kids. I've got teachers using it in school now. It's amazing. But it got to the point where I just decided to self-publish it. And I thought, you know what? I've just got to put it out there and just see what happens. And it's been so well received and so loved. And it's really, really made me happy. I mean, I get such beautiful emails from people saying, God, my child has ADHD, and I've never thought about them that way, because all we're doing is fighting and arguing and shouting. And now I see it differently. Now I understand. And that makes me really, really happy, like really happy, because that's amazing that they see something different in their child. So I've done that, and I've got another story. And I've actually got some really good news, because I haven't shared this with you yet.
Okay.
Because it's last week. But when I was in Cyprus in November, I went to a book fair, which is when you came to support me and got the book as well. And I met a publisher there, and I wasn't planning to publish anymore. I was going to go the self-publishing route. And anyway, really connected with her, really loved her ethos. And I submitted my next children's book. And last I got an email to say it's been accepted to be published.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's the next one now.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's brilliant. Well done.
Yeah, I've only told Andreas. I haven't even told my kids, I don't think.
I'll give you a few days before I put this out in the group, but yeah.
Oh, it's fine. Then it's just, yeah, because I again see, I get that, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Somebody, and then do I share this? Do I not share this? It's,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll kind of downplay myself. But anyway, it's exciting because this next one's based on my daughter and her love for
right.
her stuffed rabbit, and it's another story about acceptance and things like that. So I am really happy it's been accepted. So that's, I'll just show you quickly the book. I
Yeah.
think I've got it here. Hang on. Yeah, this is how bad I am. I'm promoting myself. Anyway, that's
That's Poppy's Miracle, yeah. Which I meant to get a copy of that so I could hold it up as well, but that's from the bookcase. It's in there somewhere. But our kids, I mean, I sat and read that with my two, and they absolutely just loved it, And then we sat and read it in two sittings, I think, which is unusual.
oh,
So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So I'll put a link. If you give me
yep,
a link as to where people can find it, Michelle, we'll stick that in at the end. But look, it's been really lovely chatting to you today, and just thanks ever so much for taking the time. It's been really wonderful, and I think there's been a lot of really useful insights in there for people as well who are wondering, not just how to make money, but how the whole thing kind of fits together when you are doing it at home.
yes.
So that's just amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Any questions, and they can post when they watch it. Happy to answer any questions or whatever, so no problem.
Lovely. Thank you.
Good.
Bye bye.